Hello everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at the political studies article titled The Resource Curse Revisited, Conflict in Coltan in the Congo. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at the title and try to figure out what this article is going to be about. The Resource Curse Revisited. So I'm already a little bit confused, because my understanding of resources is that they're good for a country, while curse implies that they're bad. The second part of the title is Conflict in Coltan in the Congo. Now, I've definitely never heard of coltan before, but I'm assuming it might be a resource given the first part of the title. So the next thing I'm going to try to figure out is what is the relationship between resources, conflict, and coltan in the Congo? Now I'm noticing that the entire article opens up with a quote, so it must be very important. Going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world, when vegetation rioted on the earth and the big trees were kings. An empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. There was no joy in the brilliance of sunshine. Joseph Conrad, The Heart of Darkness. Now, The Heart of Darkness is something that I'm vaguely familiar with. I do know that the movie Apocalypse Now was based off The Heart of Darkness, but that took place in Vietnam, not the Congo. So I'm trying to wonder what is the relationship. Looking at the content of the quote, I'm wondering, is he talking about the Congo? Although he doesn't explicitly say, I'm kind of assuming he is. And the area that he's describing he says is like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world. So obviously this area isn't developed. Let's move forward. The resource curse and its paradox. The Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as the Congo and Zaire, remains the heart of darkness, depicted so scintillatingly by Conrad in his novella. Now, I've never even heard of that word before, scintillatingly, and frankly I have trouble even pronouncing it, but we just kind of formed our own meaning of the quote, so I'm just going to move forward. A place of conflict, brutality, and exploitation, the Congo documented by Marlowe, a Belgian traveler journeying up the Congo River in search of Kurtz, the infamous Ivory Station chief and Marlowe's fellow colonists, is not that different from its present reality. The faces of DRC leaders may be different, the names of places may have changed, but Congo's horrors is unchanged. Ongoing armed conflict and strife between groups of varying nationalities, ethnicities, and ideologies overwhelm the lush land. Here, greed for political power and wealth fuels the exploitation of people, their resources, and their homeland. So now I'm starting to understand how resources can be a bad thing. The resources here in the Congo are clearly not being benefited by the people, but are being exploited. Now I'm starting to wonder how and why does this happen. Hopefully the article will address this later on. Lusting foreigners, rebels, and governments strip the land of its natural resources. It is widely acknowledged that greed exasperates the negligence of the incompetent state and thereby leads to war. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a very important sentence, but there are several vocabulary words that I'm having trouble with right now. So we're going to look them up in the dictionary. First one is exasperates. It says to make a problem or bad situation worse. The next is negligence, which reads the failure to take proper care in doing something. And finally, incompetent, not having or showing the necessary skills to do something skillfully. So now we're going to kind of reread this sentence and apply our new meaning to it, so hopefully it'll make more sense. So greed makes the problem of the state not being able to take proper care of their people worse, which leads to war. That makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm starting to form the meaning of the resource curse and its relationship to conflict. Let's move forward. In the DRC, greed has precipitated a multinational war. Most recently, since 1998, the country has transformed into a battleground for what many observers have dubbed Africa's First World War, a war that has cost over 3.8 million lives. So here's how the resource curse is applying to the Congo. And I'm interested how this specifically happened. Also, 3.8 million lives, that's a lot. I'm wondering why I've never even heard of this conflict before. Both precedent and theory lend reason for the ongoing conflict in the Congo. From the diamond mines of South and West Africa to the oil fields of Iraq and the timber-rich forests of the Amazon, millions of people in these resource-rich countries have seen their lives devastated by the mishandling of vast revenues from natural resources. So I'm learning that the resource curse isn't really specific to the Congo. It's kind of an ongoing trend. I'm not really sure about South and West Africa, but Iraq is something that I'm definitely familiar with. So judging what I know about what happened in Iraq and the situation there, I'm wondering how the situation in Congo kind of compares to that. Let's move forward. This pattern has reaffirmed the well-established resource curse. Resource-rich countries are less wealthy and less competently governed than those lacking in natural resources. So here's kind of the definition and answer to the question that I had regarding the title with the resource curse. I'm still kind of surprised, and I'm really curious to see how this actually happens. The resource curse gives reason for the empirical correlation between resource-rich countries and reduced investment in human capital, increased domestic political corruption, and perilous reductions in economic diversification. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is an extremely important sentence, but there's a lot of concepts in there that I'm not entirely familiar with, so I think that we need to look up a few terms just to get a better idea of what they're talking about. So the first is reduced investment in human capital. We're just going to look up human capital real quick and figure it out. It's the skills and knowledge and experience possessed by an individual of a population. So let's just say that's human well-being inside of a country. And the next is economic diversification. This is kind of a complex process, and I kind of want to just explain it a little bit so the class would understand, I guess, what this sentence really means. I'm just going to use a quick metaphor real quick. Say you decide to open up a lemonade stand, and your neighbor down the street opens up a competing lemonade stand. However, he offers lemonade, orange juice, and ice cream. Let's say that one year lemonades are they're not in. People are not wanting lemonade, or lemons are extremely expensive. Your business is going to hurt. And your neighbor down the street, although his business will hurt a little bit, he also has other alternative products that will keep his business afloat. The same trend can kind of be applied to nations where single market economies are much more fragile than ones that offer multiple goods. So I'm learning now that the resource curse hurts the well-being of people inside a country, it increases corruption, and has negative consequences on the economy. Let's see if I'm right. The ultimate result of these outcomes is a stunted long-term economic growth of an absently fortunate nation. Alright, so some of my speculations are getting correct here. Let's move forward. Political stability no longer looks impossible in the DRC following a power-sharing, global, and all-inclusive agreement in South Africa in December 2003, from which a transitional government was formed and the country's first presidential elections were held in July of 2006. So here is the first sign of optimism that I've seen in this entire article so far, and I'm now in a much better mood. But I'm trying to figure out a little bit about Congolese history, and I also want to understand what the political situation was like during the war. And the fact that 2016 marks the first presidential elections that's kind of a clue. So if the government was not voted in before, how did they get power? I'm thinking that it's most likely through undemocratic means, which is an explanation for why the resources were exploited. If a government's not really held accountable by their people through gaining support and votes, then they're kind of free to act solely on self-interest, and I'm wondering if that's what plays into the resource curse. Let's move on. However, even though the war is officially over, dozens of rebel armies remain fighting in the east, vying for products sold largely to the international community. Alright, so we got kind of like two more actors in this whole resource curse narrative. When we have rebel groups, and then we have the international community. And my biggest thought here is, how do other nations kind of contribute and play into a practice that also contributes to violence? It just seems like a crazy situation over there. Even though this vast country, which spans the area the size of Western Europe, or 2.34 million square kilometers, is being patrolled by the world's largest UN peacekeeping force, some 17,000 UN representatives are dispersed across the country, the Western media has significantly underplayed the war and its aftermath. So I guess the biggest question I have here is, why has this been ignored by the Western media? What benefit does it play to not report on something like this? The international public remains overwhelmingly oblivious to the ravaging of this country and the complacency of many stakeholders. With rising demand for coltan, there it is, coltan. Still not quite sure what it is, but I think that there's a bigger clue in this little sentence right here regarding the role of the international community. It says that there's a rising demand for coltan. Is it possible that the international community benefits from not doing anything, and is this mysterious resource somehow cheaper during conflict? Hopefully the article will address this later on, but I'm still a little bit confused. With the rising demand for coltan and the lack of attention from Western governments and NGOs, there is an urgent need to put forward this case study of coltan trade, examine its implications, and evaluate measures that can be taken to prevent further corruption and conflict. But how does the exploitation of this relatively unknown mineral implicate the international community? This is the question that I'm most looking forward to, and I'm really hoping that the rest of the article addresses this in full detail. However, kind of in the constraints of time, I just kind of wanted to bring forward the introduction to this paper because ideally during a 15-minute class period, I'd be able to go through this entire article. However, in just about 10 minutes, all I could get through is the introduction. So just wanted to show you guys a little practice of teacher modeling exercise. I really look forward to hearing your guys' suggestions and critique of this, and thank you very much.